I mean, you have to realize that people are coming in with no knowledge of what you're trying to say. And sometimes the title doesn't help, so it's like, what would you say to somebody who had no clue what your screenplay is about? How would you let them know that as soon as you can?
Welcome to this week's episode of the Scriptcake podcast. This week, I am honored and excited to have a dear friend of mine on this podcast. He's actually helped produce the movie I most recently directed called Seclusion, and he has a new movie that is tearing it up right now that he was the writer for as well as a producer on, called Cyst. It's almost like an instant classic, if that's not an oxymoron. But it is so much fun. I can't wait to talk about it. He's also an associate producer on movie Texas Cotton that he's got a story by credit on. And he has a bunch of new projects that are just amazing that I can't wait to get into. Welcome to the podcast, Andy Silverman.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, bud. Andy and I actually work together on some stuff pretty often. And so it's fun to be able to talk to your friends. But one of the things that I don't know that I know about you, Andy, is how'd you get started in this crazy business to begin with?
I wish I could say that like movies were like a love at first sight, but kind of started out, movies and me were mortal enemies.
Really?
Yes. I was not the type of child that wanted to sit in a room for 2 hours and be quiet and have to put up with, I was a guy who kind of wanted to play all the time and play sports and games. Mm-hmm. And I had 2 brothers and a sister. And whenever the movies came on, I kind of lost them all. They watched that while I was, off by myself. And so I kind of blamed the movies. But I was able to, I was very creative. So I was always able to come up with ways to entertain myself and come up with games that I would play. So then when my brothers and sister were done watching, they would come over and see what I was doing, and they would want to play these games that I had invented. And it kind of snowballed. It kind of was like something I really enjoyed doing, was entertaining my family mm-hmm. and people around. So I kind of, as I grew older, I kind of tried to figure out how to, turn that into a career. So I actually started inventing games and taking them out and trying to sell them. So I would go up to Toy Fair, and I just had kind of a portfolio of my games. Mm-hmm. And I would go up there, and Toy Fair was a place in New York where all the big game companies would kind of bring out their new toys for the year. But there was also a convention center where novices or people who had one game would show their games there, and you'd have agents and some producer of games walk around and take a look, and toy stores. So a lot of people there were basically trying to sell their toys to toy stores.
It's a lot like the film industry, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, I found that out later. But I would just go up and talk to people and network, and networking is kind of my entry into almost everything. I think networking is probably the biggest success factor for me. So, but I wound up speaking to so many people and networking myself into going to these parties, and I wound up getting game agents that were interested in my games. And I'd sit and have lunch with them or something. It was just a kind of a surreal experience. There was one night I was at a party with the head of Milton Bradley's game developing, and Will Shorts, who was head of Games Magazine at the time, but now he's the New York Times crossword puzzle editor. Mm-hmm. And we're just playing these games in a hotel room. So I really felt this is where I wanted to be. And at the time I had gotten a game patented. I also had 10 other games. I was flown up to Milton Bradley, and they were looking to hire somebody to design for them. I wound up, showing my games to them, and ultimately, they passed on me, which is another theme in my life.
In all screenwriters and filmmakers' lives, no doubt about that. You got to have a thick skin.
So, but I actually had 3 agents taking my games out for me at one point. Mm-hmm. And then I was living in Chicago with my wife and daughter at the time. And electronic and video games came out and just killed the board game industry. My agent said they just laid off all these people at all these game companies and stopped sending me stuff. So,
Yeah.
so, and it was interesting because I was currently working on a game I was trying to get a patent on at the time. It was called Freeze Frame, and it was a movie game that kind of predated DVDs. I was showing like one clip of a movie, and you would have to try to guess the movie from the clip, and then maybe in the next round you would get a more an easier picture from the same movie. So I was doing all this research into these movies, and at the time, then everything went bust. So I kind of was like, well, I didn't really know what to do, and I was in Chicago, and I decided that I would take a screenwriting course since I was kind of immersed in movies at the time. And I did. I went to the Columbia College in New York, not the Ivy, but the local Chicago college. And I took a sitcom writing class, I think was open that year. And I wrote, for the class, you had to write episodes. So I wrote a Seinfeld, a Frasier, and a Caroline in the City. And and the professor just loved it. He said, you should move to LA. You could definitely end up on a show because you know what you're doing. So that wasn't possible because my wife and daughter and I, she had a really good job there in Chicago. So he said, well, you can then, I guess you could write features, or you could, maybe there's a lot of good improv here in Chicago. Maybe you can do that. So I decided, let's do this. And he recommended Second City, and because they had a screenwriting program too. So of course I decided to do screenwriting, which might not have been the best decision because at the time Tina Fey and Amy Poehler were in these.
Yeah,
another good choice.
Reasonable connections right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I don't know how close I would have gotten to them, but it was certainly they were there. So that's kind of how I got into it. A long story about it.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's always interesting to find out what the pathway is because it's very rare you find someone who's like, I was 12 years old and I knew I wanted to be a screenwriter. You know what I mean? It's you go through life and you take some turns left and right and you try to figure some things out. You learn about yourself. But, I think that, creating games in a way is screenwriting.
It absolutely is. I mean, you have to keep the player or the watcher entertained constantly. The second they get bored, you kind of lose them.
Right.
And it's the same is true in games. I mean, if you're playing a game and there's like boring parts, it's like you just watch people's eyes glaze over. And the same as, when you're watching a movie or you get bored and you're out.
Right.
So keeping somebody's attention all the time is key.
One of my passions in life outside of the film industry is I like the real estate and flipping houses. And people have often asked me, like, these are two totally and completely different things. How can you be so passionate about real estate and so passionate about screenwriting and filmmaking? And I'm like, well, when I have an idea for a story, I kind of have a vision. And that's where my screenplay comes from. I write that. And then when I, decide to direct it, I'll hire crew members and cinematographers and actors and set designers to kind of create that vision. Well, flipping a house is very similar. You see a house and you kind of have a vision for it, and you hire carpenters and you hire painters and you hire, construction people to make that vision come to life. And so I think there's a number of different outlets that you can use the exact same tools on that seem to be completely different, but basically are very similar. It comes down to the fact of being creative, and expressing that creativity in a certain way. And, you've seen some of the houses I've worked on. There's a lot of thought and effort that goes into that kind of stuff. And it's the same muscles. So you decided to get into screenwriting. Well, how do you go from screenwriting? Because again, Cyst, if you haven't seen it, it's for sale now on all these different outlets. It's actually in Walmart if you can get it, because it keeps selling out of Walmart.
Yeah.
And I think it has the potential to become this kind of massive cult film. And I would, let's go ahead and talk about that. I would love to know how this project came about, and how you designed it as a writer, the architect of the story and whatnot, and that journey.
Okay, so I would say that the one movies that I did watch when I was a kid were, my parents used to let us stay up late on Fridays to watch a movie. And there was this like show called, I don't know the show, maybe it was like Horror Theater or something. And there was this host called Doc Shock who used to like he'd introduce the movies. And there were all these B horror movies that were kind of funny. And he would, between commercials, he would put on little, he would camp it up pretty much. So that was the type of movie that I did watch when I was growing up, basically because I wanted to stay up late.
So he was like an Elvira kind of person.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I think he was pre-Elvira, but let me go back and start how I kind of met the filmmakers for SIST and how we kind of got together, because that's kind of also a networking story.
Let me pause for 1 second. Let's talk about networking real quick, because you mentioned it a couple of times. I just had a great talk with Bob Sines, a fantastic screenwriter and author of a really good book. That's not the way it works. And he often talks about how incorrectly people network, where they'll just show up and hand a script to a producer that they don't know and whatnot. But you said you're good at networking, and how does that happen?
Well, you got to think the long game. It's not like, okay, I'm meeting you, I'm going to, tell you about me, and then hope you ask or, try to insist you read something of mine. To me, it's just making friends. I mean, to me, it kind of comes naturally. It's like I'll go to any event that has with screenwriters or filmmakers and just listen to them a lot. Most of it's like, because we all have writing in common. We all have films in common. We have the same trials and tribulations and everything. So when I listen to other people talk, I really don't take control of the conversation. I'll definitely ask them questions like you're asking me now. I like to sit back and listen and then find a common theme and then just wind up being friends. And then afterwards, get their card or just, exchange information, shoot them an email. And then usually you see them again at another event. And suddenly you're way closer than you were before. You have stuff in common. And, just hanging around. I mean, I go to Austin every year, which is one of the better networking events.
The Austin Film Festival?
Yeah, the Austin Film Festival and Screenwriting Conference.
Right.
But I used to go to pitch fests out in California and, just watching other screenwriters, listening to their pitches. You just kind of make a little community. Mm-hmm. And you hang out afterwards and, you kind of have a couple drinks after the pitch fest and, relax and unwind. And I think going through the wars of those things together, just bonds people. And then you care about them. Then you know what their projects are. You follow their projects, and you actually are. I mean, to me, I am interested in what other people are doing and their successes. And I just think that way you meet so many people, and then they meet people, and your just whole network expands so much that at some point something's going to click. Because breaking in is kind of like erosion. You just kind of have to keep clicking away, and you never know which connection is going to be the one that like turns the tumbler on a lock or something. And so the more you have out there, the easier it is to kind of, your odds are just increased by networking.
Right. It doesn't hurt to be talented as well and have good work to show people.
Well, if you're in it that long and you're writing every day, you're going to get better. Right. So, even if you don't start out the greatest writer in the world, you can learn from other people. You can get feedback on your scripts. You can, you can read books. You can listen to Scriptcake podcasts. You can do a lot of things to like increase, just to learn. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time. Right. Of all the different screenwriting podcasts, and everything I do kind of makes me a better writer.
Mhm.
Producing is another thing that really helped my writing a lot. So I think we were working our way towards towards how I got into producing.
Sure.
So one of the pitch fests I went to, I met a guy who really loved one of my pitches, and it was like a romantic comedy called From A to Zoe. It was about a guy who makes a bet that he can sleep his way through the alphabet, but then he meets and falls in love with a woman named Zoe, and now he's got problems because he's got to be with the 25 women before he can get to her.
Right.
So I had a producer jumped on it and helped me, get it to a lot of different studios, and ultimately it was passed on. But I had submitted it to the Austin screenwriting conference, and it made the next round. When you go to Austin and you make the next round, they put your a tag with your screenplay, the title of your screenplay on it. And I happened to be waiting for a panel at a seminar at one of the, I think on the first day, and the guy was standing in line next to me and asked me about, so what's this From A to Zoe about? So I told him, and he said, that sounds really good. Can you send it to me? And I did. And he said, this is really great. He goes, I don't think I can do it, but do you have anything else, smaller that you might want to do with me? Because I think you're a really good writer. And I said, well, I have an idea called Worst Uber Driver Ever. And he said, okay, can you send me like 6 5-minute episodes and let's see if we can get it done. So I did, and he said, okay, these are good. Let's shoot it. So we raised the money, and it wasn't a lot, but we wound up shooting. It wound up being called Buckle Up, and it's on Amazon Prime now. And it did, it was fun. And the shoot was a weekend shoot down in Austin, where I met all these different people on set. Producers, DP, and I got to be really good friends with everybody because, again, it's another form of networking. Now you're in a 2-day shoot with a group of people, and you're basically in another war. So when you're done, you have a lot to talk about. And they were working on another project afterwards called Texas Cotton, and they wanted me to read it because they thought I could give good notes. So I did, and I really enjoyed it. And they asked if I wanted to come down and be a part of the shoot. Of course, I did. I jumped into it. We wound up doing a short 10-minute proof of concept, which was crazy weekend unto itself. And then from there, we wound up selling the feature. And I got to help with that. That was like a 20-day shoot down in San Antonio, where I did everything pretty much. And
you have a story by credit on there, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of stuff I did on the set, and helped the story a lot. The credits, we had 2 writers, and then Tyler Russell, who's the other producer, and the guy that I worked with on Buckle Up, and the one who I worked with Sist.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Russell, and then we had a really great 20-day shoot. It was probably the highlight of my life. That 20-day shoot. It was just so much fun, hanging out with Gene Jones and George Hardy, and a lot of it was really my first plunge into what a feature is. What working on a set is. So on the set of Texas Cotton, I really got to be close friends with George Hardy. And George Hardy he was known for being the father in Troll 2, which was considered one of the worst movies ever made. So,
he's like a cult classic kind of actor guy, right?
He is, and he's a dentist. He's a practicing dentist who lives and works in Alabama, and occasionally does movies. So,
all right.
But he's so connected. He's such a great guy, and he was over. I think he got hired to work in a German film that was kind of a spin-off on Troll 2 called Troll's World, and he met a producer over there who was working on it, he worked on a film on the Trolls world, but it was filmed over in Germany. Well, the German company Phantom Films wanted to come over and dub the film in English, and they used Tyler and me to work on that and do some ADR and redo the whole thing. So while they were here, Tyler had this idea of this just assist going berserk in a dentist in an office. We pitched the idea to them, and they were like, well, yeah, okay, well, why don't you write a script and see, and then we'll see if we want to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
So Tyler and I kind of sat down, and we we sat down and just kind of fleshed out this whole story of, we wanted to set it in the 60s. And like I said earlier, like that was those B movies that I watched in the 60s this is what this project kind of reminded me of. So we created this story about, a dermatologist in the 60s who's using laser technology for the first time, and he's trying to get a patent on this machine, and things go horribly wrong, and it turns this cyst into a monster which terrorizes the office. And it was a crazy shoot, but I mean, the company from Phantom Films, they loved it. They said, okay, let's do it.
That's awesome.
So we wound up shooting it in Baltimore in 2019 in horrible conditions. We had it was like a abandoned warehouse with no heat, no hot water, no bathrooms. I said the shoot was more of a horror movie than the actual movie.
That often is the case with independent films, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. I guess you heard about me then. And you
I did hear about you.
We kind of have a mutual friend who I met networking actually in Philadelphia. So another piece of the networking puzzle. And he introduced us, and we kind of decided we wanted to work together, see how it worked out.
Yeah.
And you kind of know what happened from there.
I know, but nobody else knows. Tell them what happened there, because tell me what happened. Give me your perspective on it.
This local guy comes up to me and says, and we meet, and we talked about a project that we got a script for, and we're going out and trying to figure out finding locations.
And this is during the pandemic, mind you. So
yes.
It had a lot to do with kind of the evolution of this process, because filming during the pandemic was a whole different story than filming during non-pandemic times.
Right. So we wound up finding a script that we could do during the pandemic, or at least we thought we could do. Mm-hmm. And we wound up getting a place up in the Poconos. So the film's called Seclusion, and we shot it in May up in a big house in the Poconos, where we were able to all stay together. We'd all just gotten vaccinated because vaccines were just coming out. So everyone had to be vaccinated. Everyone had to stay in the house. I think I was the only one allowed to leave and get things and bring it back in. So we slept there, we shot there, we ate there. And it was a really great experience, especially, it was kind of the first time I think a lot of us were around other people during the pandemic.
That's true. I think it'd been a year and a half since, we'd actually gone out and talked to people that weren't living in our houses. Yeah.
I think we had a successful shoot. We shot for 9 days. Then we came down and shot outside in a local Bridgeport, a local town. And then we went back and did some pickups back up in the Poconos. And
I think it was a total of 14 or 15 days.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
And we were able to do it on a decent budget. We were able to stay under budget, mainly because I think there are ways to cut your costs as an independent, and actually going out to the supermarket and buying food and cooking it for everyone.
Right. I think someone's getting a chef credit on the film as well as a producing credit, aren't you?
So yes, I don't know if that chef is something that goes on IMDb credit list, but
catering credit. But also it helped that we paid one fee for location and for housing.
Yeah.
The fact, this is a massive, beautiful 9,000 square foot home that we shot in.
Mhm.
you know, can probably accommodate about 20 people to live there like comfortably.
Yeah.
And it had a movie theater, like a big movie theater in it, so we could see our dailies there. We used it a few times, and I thought it worked out pretty well. And we're so excited to get this movie out. And we are actually today we're actually going to hear the score on the film for the first time. So we're excited to see how that goes, and the sound mix. That's the first time that we get to listen to all that. So keep a lookout for Seclusion. We'll probably start submitting it to festivals soon, and we've actually already had a few conversations with some distribution companies. So we'll see how that goes. We'll keep you posted. While all this is going on, I know you're constantly writing. So what do you have going on now?
When the pandemic shut everything down, I kind of went in and just was able to kind of go into my own little worlds and just write constantly. I wrote 3 other features that, well, one I feel was like will be a good follow-up to Cyst. It's kind of the same audience, same kind of crazy horror comedy. I mean, basically the idea is I wanted to do to the Thanksgiving dinner what Jaws did to the ocean. So
how did that come about? What was it? What was the impetus for that?
I sometimes I wonder where I do come up with these ideas, but my wife loves Thanksgiving, and like it's always turns out to be like a nightmare, like family get together. And I mean, no, I won't say it turns out to be a nightmare. We have, we have a great family and we all get together. But I just would be the person who was involved with cutting the turkey. And kind of staring at this big turkey, like this daunting, and then, cutting it apart. I just like thought, well, what if like something came out of the cavity of the turkey and was just mad, angry at me because I'm cutting the turkey. So that's kind of how this whole crazy screenplay came about. And, there aren't very many Thanksgiving horror films. So
Are there any Thanksgiving horror films?
Well, there hopefully there will be.
All right. You know what?
So that was one of them.
I've had the pleasure of reading it, and it's so much more than a horror film. I got to give you a lot of credit in your writing. There's a level of depth that you don't see in maybe this genre very often, and I'm excited to see not only this movie but some additional ones that you've written come out.
Yeah, thanks. I do, and then another one that kind of I'm trying to veer away, I think, from just horror comedy. So while we were going up to shoot Seclusion up in the mountains of Pennsylvania, we were with David Greenberg, the other producer, and I was in the back seat.
And David, who's connected us, he's the one that introduced us to each other.
Yes. So I was just looking about the, what's going on in this area, and somehow I came across this cryptid called the squonk that lives in the mountains of Pennsylvania. And it's like, cryptids like, the Jersey Devil or a Sasquatch, or, they're legendary, real or imagined creatures that have never been proven to exist. So I read about our Pennsylvania's cryptid called the squonk. And it's this real sad creature that is so ugly that it spends all day crying. And like if you come near it, it can dissolve into a puddle of tears. And I thought, wow, what a great, interesting character. And I kind of came up with a story based on just that kind of just triggered something in me. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a screenplay about a woman who's marred, she's disfigured as a child, and all she wants to do is fit in, but she thinks because she's, unattractive that she'll never be accepted. And then she stumbles on the legend of the squonk. And she finds out that if you're able to touch the squonk, it'll make you beautiful. So she spends her life trying to, lure this thing out so she can touch it. And of course, there's a exotic game hunter in town that finds out that she's got the ability to lure this out. So it becomes, there's the antagonist who kind of gets in her way. Mm-hmm. So I actually put together a sizzle site for this, which is on my website. and it's kind of explains the story. It's battyinkproductions.com. That's my website. All my things are up there. You can see all the things I've worked on and links to it, to everything. And then we were also talking about another project we were also talking about was we wanted to shoot another feature in a house, in another big house. So you supplied the house and you told me, you know, I want you to write something about this house. So I did. And I think it's a pretty good lower budget feature that hopefully we'll be shooting later this in the fall when it's off season down in the Outer Banks. And I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. That's a fun.
I think that now that we have, you know, shot one feature in a massive vacation home, I think we're just going to keep doing that and traveling to all these great locations around the world and shooting in nice vacation places. I think that's a good plan to have.
Sounds good to me. And it also seems, you know, shooting an indie film still during the pandemic, I think these are like some of the easier ways to be safe, you know, having everybody kind of in the same area and, you know, together where you're not going out nights and, you know, meeting other people. It's just, I feel right now it's kind of the best way to shoot films as an indie producer.
Yeah, we went through the gamut, you know, dealing with like SAG's COVID policies and trying to figure out what we could do and what we couldn't do. And I know on one of the projects that we talked about, which ended up not being filmed, but hopefully will be in the future, the cost of meeting all the SAG requirements, this was, you know, at the top of the pandemic, probably about a year ago or something like that, year and a half ago.
Yeah.
It was going to cost more than the actual budget of the film that we had. And it was crazy. And we were just like, I understand safety and protocol, but, you know, we just can't make this work.
Yeah.
So we were able to figure it out and make it work. And again, excited for you guys to see Seclusion when it comes out. Hopefully in the not too distant future, we're still dotting some I's and crossing some T's on that project. One of the things that you do also is you do work as a kind of a screener for different festivals. And I wanted to get a take on you because you see a lot of stuff that comes through. Do you also read scripts or do you just focus on watching movies?
I do read scripts, not really for contests, but I'm in writers groups and, okay, you know, a lot. I read a lot of scripts.
So one of the things that you and I've talked about in the past are just kind of, you know, levels of screenwriting. Mm-hmm. You know, you have a novice level where someone's still trying to figure out, you know, how do you write a proper slug line and what do you put in description and, you know, what are the technical aspects of writing going on? And then you kind of have the next level up where people kind of master that. And then they start writing, you know, everything properly, but it's still kind of bare bones. There's not a lot of meat on those bones. And then they eventually evolve to the next level where they're like, okay, I can use these descriptions instead of just saying this person looks that way. I can actually add some visual depth to this movie, to this scene, and add some emotion through the location that I'm shooting at and, you know, what the characters are doing to reveal information about them and whatnot. What are kind of the most common things that you see in scripts that just kind of hold them back? Because, I mean, a lot of scripts have great ideas, but if they're not executed well, it's really hard to get into it.
So I kind of want to know, as soon as possible, what I'm reading. Like, what is this about? Am I just meeting characters? Do I know why am I meeting these characters? I kind of want to know what the story is about as soon as you can. You get me in, and now I know what I'm rooting for, what I'm hoping for. I mean, it's great. Like, a lot of people spend a lot of time just introducing characters in situations that don't really, they're stagnant. They're not, it's just like, there's a lot of exposition. Same in film. I mean, when I'm watching films, I find the same thing. It's like, well, what am I watching? What's happening? Who am I following? A lot of times it's not clear who the main character is. So I think that's kind of something you want to do to get people interested right away. It's like, okay,
Can you give me an example of a film that does it successfully, where right off the bat, you know exactly, you know, what you're in for and what's going on? It meets that criteria for you.
So there was this TV show called Blind Spot that the first 2 minutes like just dropped us into this world of like there was like it was in Times Square in New York City. There was like a bag there that people thought was a bomb, and police came in, FBI, everyone was like, he didn't know what it was, and then suddenly like this woman climbs out of the bag that we weren't sure what it was, and she's got all these tattoos on her back and or all over her body, and and then one of the tattoos was the name of the investigating officer. So it was just like, bam, there I am.
Right.
This is going to be a ride, because
Right.
You got all these you kind of see there's so many tattoos. There's probably going to be a story about every one of them.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Why is just so
mystery.
Things like that can just grip you.
Grab you.
Yeah.
You and I recently both read a screenplay, and I think we both got about 20 pages in and had a conversation, and we didn't even know who the protagonist was, and we weren't even sure. Like, a couple of interesting things happened, but we're like, okay, where does this go and what's going on? And you don't even want to read anymore. And that's one of the things that I think is imperative. So many books and screenwriting gurus and producers and production companies will always say, we'll read 5 or 10 pages. And it's exactly what you're saying. At 5 or 10 pages, if I don't know what I'm going on and I'm not being entertained and I'm not going on a ride, I'm out, because I got 50,000 more scripts to read.
Yeah. I mean, you have to realize that people are coming in with no knowledge of what you're trying to say. And they might not even, and sometimes the title doesn't help, so it's like, what would you say to somebody who had no clue what your screenplay is about? How would you let them know that as soon as you can? To me, that's kind of at least hint at it. I mean, I know there's like a lot of theories and, inciting incidents, happen at certain pages, but to me, as soon as you can do it in a way that we understand who the character that we want to follow is and why this event that turned their life upside down is interesting and relevant.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as, I think you need to punch the audience in the face right from the get-go to let them know that we're in it.
Yeah.
Like bam, because, a lot of times when people are watching stuff, they're maybe not completely connected. They're not interested. They're on their phone. They're busy. They're tired. They have a million things going on. But if you can grab them right from the get-go, I think that changes everything. Not only for the script, but when the film is shot or when the TV show is made, it just grabs you by the neck and says, let's go. And it doesn't even have to be an action movie. That can happen in a drama, in a comedy, in a horror movie, definitely in a horror movie, and so on and so forth. So I couldn't agree more.
And for me personally, like reading the first page, I don't really want to be world entered. Like I didn't really want to read a lot of description of the background, like where we are, what the person is doing, like details of somebody waking up, or I just want to, I just skim through that because it's like, okay, that's not really relevant. It might be, but it shouldn't be. I mean, if you're going to introduce it that soon, you should really just be acclimating your reader to, your main character and, getting us interested.
Years ago, as I was researching how people write, not just screenplays, but books and whatnot, I came across an interesting note that something like 30 or 40% of novelists start their book with the person taking a shower.
Mm-hmm.
And they're thinking about something. And I was just like, wow, I didn't think that large a percentage of people would do that. But they do, because what are the few places where you can actually think about stuff? It's in the shower, if you're cutting the grass, if you're driving a car, pretty much is all, because the rest of the time we're just connected to screens. And that's not entertaining, and it's not exciting, and I don't think it does pull you in. But I think it's something that we commonly do, because you want your character to be thinking about something, and an easy way to do that is to access it that way. But I mean, think back on how many movies you've seen where the first scene is someone getting up and getting dressed and getting, yeah, we don't need to see all that.
Except in Groundhog Day. What do you do?
Groundhog Day will be one of the exceptions to many things. That movie broke a lot of rules and broke new ground, and I think it's one of my favorite films. I love that film. So, what would you say to a young screenwriter or someone young in their career about progressing and getting to the point where, you know what, you're blessed? People will read your scripts. I know you were just in Los Angeles, and you just took around to meetings and you had a bunch of people request scripts. How do we get to that point?
I mean, so as a screenwriter in the beginning, like, don't take rejections personally. Like, don't let them discourage you. I mean, I think, like, if I look back at my life and I see that I was, I tried to sell games, I got rejections. I tried to interview at Milton Bradley, I got rejection. I wrote a comic strip that I had just tried to get syndicated, got rejections. I think, like, I got the EGOT of rejections.
You've done it in every industry. Just need a Broadway play that gets rejected and you'll complete it.
Oh, I think I have one of those too.
Okay.
So, I mean, because every rejection kind of, pushes you. I mean, to me, it encourages me. It's like, okay, like, what didn't they like? If somebody's willing to say why they didn't like it and be honest, it's a learning experience. I mean, you're not going to jump in right away and write the greatest screenplay in the world. You're going to have to learn what works, what doesn't work, why people are, losing interest in your script. And same thing with film. So I feel like just harden yourself. I mean, it's, I just have all my rejection letters together in a box in the attic. Might have to get a new place, but but eventually, like I said before, with the networking and with continuing the writing, sometimes one of these tumblers will just click into place and you won't be rejected. And, you'll move on and you'll have movies out there.
I mean, if you look at the making of Cyst, it was you, A, having to work on your writing, B, going to the pitch competition in LA, and then going to the Austin Film Festival, and then the person asking you about it, and then saying, oh, I really like that, and then you made the first film, and then you met the actor on that film, and that actor happened to be connected to these people in Germany who needed some ADR work, which you got connected to, which eventually resulted in a pitch, which eventually resulted in you talking or typing out the screenplay and getting it greenlit. I mean, that's like 13 or 14 steps. That doesn't happen right off the bat. And, I could probably say the same thing about me, getting my first project off the ground and the rejections that I went through. And, I struggle with it at first. The first time I got a hard rejection, I didn't write for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I wasn't good at this, so why am I wasting my time? And, looking back on it, it was my ego. My ego was hurt. And so I wasted 6 months of my life in terms of screenwriting career because I didn't work on it. But eventually I couldn't take it and I started writing again. It got to the point where, I once had somebody eviscerate one of my scripts. And this is, I think, my third or fourth script. And this is the script that got me an agent in LA. And it's a script that got made. Okay. And this is before, it was after I got an agent with it and before it got made. In that middle ground, someone wanted to read it. And she absolutely just tore it to shreds.
Mm-hmm.
And the first sentence was just vicious. And it was the nicest of the sentences for this entire thing. I mean, just brutal. I think it went on for like 2 pages of, you're evil and this sucks. And I can't believe that you got an agent with this, and on and on and on. And I saw her later on that day and we started, I just walked up to her and started talking to her. And she was like, didn't you get my note? Because she left the note. She didn't even say it to me. She wrote it up and left it. And I'm like, yeah, I appreciate the feedback. So what's going on? And she was blown away because in some ways, I think that note was meant to hurt me.
Mhm.
But I was far enough along in my career that you can't hurt me. Like, I'm sorry that you don't like it, but it's really well written. And I know that. And I think that's a plateau as a writer you have to get to in terms of dealing with rejection. Like even now, when you get rejected or I get rejected, it's not because it's not well written. It's because they may or may not, enjoy the journey or enjoy the concept or enjoy some particular aspect of it, or it may not fit with what that particular company is doing.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, it's not because the writing is bad. And once you get that kind of confidence, it's almost like a shield. It almost makes you bulletproof. And it makes it a lot easier to get these constant rejections because it's always one of a million things. The budget's too high. Oh, we're focusing more on this type of film. I've had people reach up to me. Do you have anything with, airplane accidents? I know a production company who's looking to make an airplane, wreck movie. I'm like, that's kind of specific, but that's exactly how the industry is. That's what these companies do. They're looking for very specific niche items. And if you have it, great, and if you don't, sometimes you're going to get a rejection. And, again, and you have to build up to it. You're not going to have it on your first script. I surely didn't.
Mhm.
But now I'm at that point where, yeah, I know it's well written, whether you like it or not. And that has gone a long way to make it a lot easier for me. How about for you? Because your stuff is good, right?
Yeah, but I feel like it's, you're wearing a Kevlar vest and you get hit with bullets. It still hurts a little bit. It doesn't kill you, but still. But I had a script that I used the Blacklist. I don't know, that service that, they'll rate scripts. And
Right.
if you get a certain level, they'll pass them on to, or you just get notoriety. So I had one script that got an 8, which is like very high.
Fantastic. That's amazing on the Blacklist. Yeah.
And I got like a rewrite. I got another read because of it, and then that read gave me a 3. Same script. And then they also give notes, and they'll give reasons why, and like even the 3, like I couldn't understand. It's like you gave me a 3, but your review seems like it's in the 6s and 7s. It's like,
Right.
I don't understand. And then at the end it said, well, I just didn't like the way that it turned. I was hoping that it was a different type of movie. So it was, it was somebody else bringing baggage to the read.
Right.
That like I was hoping for a different ending. Well, I didn't want to. That wasn't my ending. It's like, it's fine. If at least it brought out that type of emotion in somebody, you would think it would get more than a 3. But
I have an ending story for you. I will share. The second movie I directed didn't have an ending that kind of neatly wrapped everything up. Okay, it just kind of left some things unanswered, and just I was just kind of making an emotional statement about something personal, and did really well at some film festivals. Really excited about what I was doing. And one of the big festivals, and I won't name it, but it's one of the ones you want to get into. It's not Sundance, it's not Toronto, but it's top 10. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I was out and about walking one day, and the phone rings. And hey, I'm so and so. I'm in charge of the films that get into this particular festival. Da 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 da. It's like, wow, they're calling me. I can't believe I got into this festival. It's a huge festival. I'm so excited. And, I played the movie, and it's entertaining, and I loved it. And the movie's about a love triangle between a woman and these 2 guys, basically. And it gets to the end of the movie. It's designed so you kind of want this one person to be chosen, but, I'll ruin the ending. Yeah, I don't tell you, that they're with that person. And she goes, so I got to the ending. I couldn't believe it. She has to be with so-and-so. She has to. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you really got involved in it. That's fantastic. Goes, but I can't show this to my audience. So she literally said to me, and this is a curator for a film festival, if you change the ending, and she ends up with him, I will let this movie into our festival.
Sounds like tampering to me.
Well, talk about people bringing their own baggage to something. Sadly, our film was never in that festival because I wasn't going to change my ending because I wanted it to be a certain way. And, I was very proud of that movie. And I wish that, it had gotten into bigger festivals like that, but it just didn't happen to work out. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But we did win Best Picture at a film festival. So yay.
Yeah.
So you're right. A lot of people do bring their own baggage to it. I remember this tiny little film came out about 25 years ago called Titanic. Have you ever heard of that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
And so I remember the first time I saw it and it ended, no one left the theater. And it wasn't because there was an Easter egg at the end, like a Marvel movie. It was because everyone just went on this crazy emotional journey and they needed a few minutes to kind of put themselves back together. It was a very impactful film. One of my best friends hated it. And, it went on to become at that time the highest grossing movie of all time. It won Best Picture and Best Director and just did everything a movie could possibly do and more. And it just dawned on me, wow, I met someone else that couldn't stand it. One of my faculties would always complain, why is there no oil in the water? Why is the water so clean inside the ship? Little technical things. And they hated it.
That's stuff that if you put in a screenplay, you'd be like, why is somebody saying, why is it oil in the water?
Right. Yeah. So it just dawned on me, if people can hate Titanic, probably a lot of people are going to hate what I do. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no film that is universally loved.
No, and take Cyst, for instance. You should see the reviews. This film is not for everyone. Like some of the reviews are glowing and others are like, this is the worst. It's just, I enjoy reading the reviews, even the bad ones. It's such a, campy, crazy, over the top B movie that if you don't get that that's what it is, then it's kind of, it's on you.
There's an audience for it.
Yeah.
And if you're not in that audience, you're probably not going to go for that ride.
Right. And, and you can see in the trailer whether you're going to like this movie or not.
Yeah, that movie is blowing up. I just saw the Japanese poster for it. That looks so cool.
And today they're launching, get this, a Cyst VHS release with hot sauce, with Cyst hot sauce that they're packaging.
I'm sorry, Cyst hot sauce?
Yes, like, stuff you put on like chicken wings. So somebody thinks this movie's got some marketing potential.
All right. So you can buy the movie on, and you said VHS, right?
Yes, this is like a company that kind of a retro film company. It's like Tales from the Crypt on Instagram and Retro Release Video. So that's a company that like puts together, that kind of caters to horror fans that kind of want the packaging for the VHS, whether people are still using those machines or not.
It's like the collector's edition version kind of thing of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if you love over the top B horror movies, you got to check out Cyst. And if you still have a VHS player and you like hot sauce, you got to get that version of it as well. Well, Andy, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. I've known you so well for a while now, and I learned a lot of things about you that I didn't know. So really enjoyed the talk.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm happy to have you again. Andy's website is baddyinkproductions.com. And you can also find the Cyst trailer on YouTube. Look for the 2022 version of the Cyst trailer to get a really good idea of it. I can't wait to see what this movie does for you. And I'm really excited about the stuff you have coming in the future.
Thanks.
Looking
forward to working with you more.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it as well, buddy. Until next time.
Thank you so much for watching this video. And as a small token of my appreciation, I want to offer you a free video course on how to outline your screenplay. I normally charge $299 for this course, but for a limited time, it is free. Now, it is a 5-day course, but I'm giving you 7 days to finish this outline, okay? After 7 days, that course goes away. So if you're not dedicated and you don't want to knock out a killer outline for your screenplay, don't do it. But if you do, click the link below. I can't wait to hear how you like it.